Dustin Poirier returned to action last month in a fantastic scrap against fellow lightweight Michael Chandler. However, it has since come to light via a social media post that the Diamond is suffering from a pretty nasty-looking staph infection, a skin infection caused by bacteria. Today, we're discussing Poirier's brutal-looking staph infection, plus Conor McGregor's reaction to his picture, as well as some other bits and pieces about staph. Stay with us. First up, what could be next for Poirier? Let's see. Dustin completed what he referred to as the violence triangle a few weeks back by bagging the win over Michael Chandler, adding to wins he already held over Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez. All are viewed as some of the most violent lightweights in UFC history, and Dustin has stoppage wins over all of them. And shortly after the fight, he discussed what might be next, but it doesn't seem as though a rumored fight with Beneil Dariush is going to happen. As Poirier has admitted, that one's not super exciting when I think about it. Of course, Dustin is used to the headline fights these days, and even though Dariush is a standout competitor, he simply doesn't have the pulling power of some of the other guys on the roster for one reason or another. Speaking about what could be next up, he explained that he wants big fights, fun fights, before going on to add, I don't know man, I completed the violence triangle, finished Gaethje, finished Eddie, finished Chandler. There's a bunch of fights that would be crazy matchups. I just don't know a name right now. Who do you think makes sense next for Dustin? We're talking about Dustin's staph infection post now. Stay tuned. Dustin has had a pretty quiet year. However, after only fighting once, it seems like he will have a busy end to the year after he's recently revealed that he spent some time in the hospital of late with a pretty nasty looking staph infection. Earlier this month, Poirier was admitted to the hospital with a complaint in his left foot, and it turns out the infection was actually resistant to antibiotics. As a result, the Diamond was left holed up at the hospital whilst doctors attempted to figure out the best way to treat the infection. And whilst he was in the hospital, he decided to take to Twitter to give his fans a quick update on his ailment, posting a pretty gruesome photo of the foot which appeared to be completely infected with the bothersome staph. However, Dustin appeared to be in good spirits, as he responded to one comment which suggested that he was going to 30-27 the infection by saying, "The doctor did inform me that the bacteria does not know jiu-jitsu, so we should be safe." He then went on to add that he hoped to be out of the hospital the following day, so hopefully now his infection has cleared up. What did you guys make of the photograph? Pretty brutal, right? So what did Conor have to say then? While most people expressed concern for Poirier and wished him well, a certain Conor McGregor unsurprisingly had a different approach for his Louisiana nemesis. Responding to Poirier's picture, McGregor seemed to allude to his own misfortune in the octagon in his last fight against Dustin, saying, "Karma the left paw and all, haha, chop that thing off, keep it for Halloween pal, ha ha ha." But of course, it was quickly deleted. McGregor had previously sent Dustin well wishes in a way only he can, by saying, "Heal up soon, scruffy knickers." But Poirier didn't miss a beat and quickly shot back. "You done filming Roid House and ready to get slapped around again?" Of course, this was in reference to McGregor's perceived use of steroids whilst out injured, and his being cast in the Roadhouse remake. McGregor is no stranger to controversy where comments towards Dustin are concerned, and the pair are known to still share a frosty relationship after Conor showed how little class he has by taking shots at Poirier's wife. However, McGregor has since removed himself from the US ADA testing pool, so it appears as though his return to the UFC might be some way away yet. The Irishman needs at least 6 months in the testing pool before he's allowed to compete again, so it's likely we won't see him before the end of the summer at the very earliest, if at all. What do you guys make of McGregor's crude messages to Poirier? Poirier's now back home after surgery. Stick around to hear about it. It seems as though Dustin is well on the road to recovery, but he's not quite out of the woods just yet. Having undergone surgery last week, the former lightweight title challenger was released last week, and his wife Jolie took to Instagram to give his fans a little update on her man. She revealed that the surgery went well, before adding that Dustin will now be focusing on his recovery. The missus then revealed that the staph infection had failed to respond to oral antibiotics, and after a second MRI scan, the doctors found an abscess that needs to be drained. She added, "So now he's back in the hospital for surgery. I'll post an update once he's out. Thank you everyone for the kind words and support." Dustin himself then jumped on social media to reassure fans that he would bounce back, before adding, "Everyone talking and kicking when I'm down, that's coward movements. I want all the smoke," probably referring to McGregor. Dustin was last out at UFC 281, in which he submitted the ever-game Michael Chandler in what was always destined to be the fight of the night. Who would you guys like to see Poirier up against next time out? Anthony Smith has been discussing a potential fourth fight between Poirier and McGregor now. With the beef between Poirier and McGregor showing no signs of letting up, UFC light heavyweight contender and analyst Anthony Smith has recently angered the Irishman with his views on who would come out on top should the pair throw down once again. Smith believes McGregor should look elsewhere for an opponent once he eventually returns to action, despite both men appearing to agree to fight again once both are fully fit. Smith appears to believe that the pre-fight hype would be much more entertaining than the fight itself, and said as much to Michael Bisping during an episode of their Believe You Me podcast. Smith, who fought for light heavyweight gold against John Jones a few years back, explained that we all know what comes along with a McGregor fight, but whatever happens and whatever Poirier claims, he's always going to take that fight simply due to the riches that come along with it. He continued by saying of Dustin, "He's going to take that paycheck any chance he gets, and I'm here to watch it. I'll buy it, and I'll put money in his pocket. I'm here for it, just for the build-up." Smith then went on to explain that Conor wasn't really competitive in the last two fights, and seems to believe that Dustin would come out on top yet again if they do have a fourth fight, saying, "He's just better. It's just a fact." Do you guys agree? Let's talk staph now. What exactly is it? Staph infections can potentially be very nasty and are caused by a bacteria known as Staphylococcus aureus. The bacteria lives on the ground, on surfaces, and on the skin of around 1/3 of the population. It's especially prevalent in the nose. Those who carry the bacteria don't show symptoms given the fact that it's pretty much harmless as long as it doesn't come into contact with an open wound. Of course, given the nature of MMA with athletes fighting in just shorts and a top for women, the likelihood of coming into contact with staph on a mat or in the octagon is pretty high. Of course, the chances of receiving an open wound whilst fighting are also quite high, so mixed martial artists are at a pretty high risk of staph. Once infected, it can be a pretty gnarly experience, with some cases resulting in blisters, boils, and sometimes even things like cellulitis. Occasionally, it's a little worse, and former UFC fighter the late Kevin Randleman almost died after a staph infection leaked into his bloodstream and shut down his kidneys and liver before putting him in a coma. If caught early, staph can generally be treated with regular antibiotics, but on occasion it does have the potential to turn deadly. So if you're a combat sports athlete or even train as an amateur, you should take the necessary precautions after every training session and make sure to shower and wash out any cuts thoroughly. Have you guys ever had staph? So what else can MMA athletes do to prevent staph? Stay tuned to find out. Most combat sports athletes will encounter staph at one point or another, with varying degrees of seriousness. Most promotions will cancel a fight from their card if they find out a fighter is infected with staph, which is why Kevin Lee came in for so much criticism after so obviously fighting with staph and not disclosing it during his fight with Tony Ferguson. Athletes can easily pass it back and forth to each, so precautions must be taken. One of the best ways for gyms to minimize the risks to their fighters is to regularly sanitize mats and equipment after each session. They should also stop anyone who's infected with staph from rolling, which is why it's imperative to inform your coach if you ever have staph symptoms. Gyms should also provide plenty of hand sanitizer for their athletes, and fighters should always shower straight after a session on the mat. Of course, it goes without saying that sanitary products like razors and towels shouldn't be shared, but colonization is the real problem. You can be as sanitary as you like, but it won't change the fact that staph lives on in the nose, and to really reduce the risk of staph infections, both fighters and gyms need to up their collective games. Better sanitation and protocols are needed to really make sure everyone who steps into a gym and octagon is safe. Give us your best tips to fight staph below. As usual, thank you for stopping in today, and remember to tune in again next time for some more fun and games. And why not do us a big favor by liking and sharing today's video, whilst also subscribing to our channel so you don't miss out on more great content in the future.